What are prospective cohort studies, and what can we learn about nutrition from them? Let's science it. Hey, welcome to Nourishable. I'm Dr. Lara. Prospective cohort studies allow researchers to see if there's an association between an exposure and risk of developing an outcome in the future. So let's say we're interested in sugary drinks as our exposure and type 2 diabetes as our outcome. We'd ask a group of healthy people about how many sodas they drink, and then several years later, check back with them to see if they have developed diabetes. It's prospective because we're looking forward to see how many people develop an outcome. And what is a cohort, you may ask? A cohort is just a group of people with some shared characteristic. For example, you could call your kindergarten class a cohort. Aw, look at us cute kids from the 90s. A researcher could have recruited my whole Canadian kindergarten class, asked us, or rather our caregivers, to fill out a bunch of different surveys about our lifestyle, and then followed up with us every few years to see what happened as we just went about living our lives, running around in the snow, saying "hey" and a boot. Then they could ask a question like, what is the relationship between eating Lunchables as a kid and hosting a nutrition YouTube channel as an adult? Obviously, no one would fund that study, but my case report suggests that the relationship is strong. But the reality is we can learn a lot about nutrition from prospective cohort studies. This study, published by a team of researchers from Harvard, used a prospective cohort design to investigate the association between sugary drinks and risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Their cohort was a group of about 40,000 men who were all physicians. These doctors were recruited back in 1986, the era of mullets and neon tracksuits, and then followed for decades. This cohort is called the Health Professionals Follow-Up Study, and it's still ongoing today in 2023. Back in 1986, they asked the doctors to fill out a bunch of questions about their health and used a giant survey to ask them about how frequently and how much they ate of different foods and beverages.
Thanks for participating in our research study, Doc, and thanks for getting the questionnaire back so quick. I just wasn't clear on some of your answers. Do you mind if we look at them now?
Yeah, I answered all the questions. I had to think about some of them for a little while, but sure, let's take a look at it.
Okay, so in the last year, how often did you consume 1 tablespoon of cream? For example, in your coffee or sour cream, excluding fat-free.
My Dunkies order hasn't changed since 1957. Extra large, extra cream, extra sugar. So that's, 2 tablespoons per cup of Joe times 3 cups a day times 7 days a week. So that's 42. I think that's what I wrote down there.
Yeah, you did. At least, I think that's what it says. Doctor script is very challenging. Yeah. And I really appreciate you putting in that much thought into your question, but there's just one thing. It's multiple choice.
Really? I must have been doing too many things at once.
Let's try and figure out the best matches to your Dunkies math. But before we do that, are you still on for a meeting here again in 10 years?
Same time?
Yeah, if that works for you.
Nope, I got jazzercise at noon. Can we do 2?
Every few years, the researchers asked all the doctors to fill out those health and diet questions again.
Dr. Dawn! Thank you for answering the email that I sent out. Except I couldn't open the attachment. Did it have the questionnaire I sent you?
Yeah, I have it. I answered all the questions. I have it right. Oh, shoot. I'm trying to sell my Beanie Baby collection on eBay, and I accidentally attached my listing to the email, not the answers to the questionnaire. I'm still getting used to this BlackBerry.
That's okay, Doc. Let's just do the questionnaire now. In the last year, how often did you consume carbonated beverages with caffeine or sugar? Like Coke, Pepsi, Mountain Dew, Dr. Pepper? Serving size is a bottle, a can, or one glass.
Oh, I love Mountain Dew. I keep a mini fridge full of the stuff in my office. I buy 2 30-packs a week. I don't drink them all. Usually 2 or 3 roll over into the next week. So let's say 47 12-ounce cans a week.
47 per week. Okay. Let's try and find the multiple choice answer that best reflects how frequently you do the do. Here it is. Looks like 6 or more servings per day.
I'm a doctor. Do as I say, not as I do.
And just to confirm, you do not have diabetes?
Nope. My doc says just keep doing what I'm doing.
For this particular study, the researchers studied men who did not have type 2 diabetes back in 1986 and then followed their data for 20 years.
Hey Doc, I didn't get a response from your questionnaire this year.
Yeah, I posted it on my MySpace page, but you didn't answer my friend request.
Doc, I'll accept your friend request, but let's get through some of these questions now. In the last year, how often did you eat donuts?
Rainbow sprinkles are my weakness. If I'm at Dunkies and I can see the rainbow sprinkles, they have to come with me.
So 1 to 3 per week, 1 per week, 2 to 4 per week, 5 to 6 per week, per day, 1 per day?
That's it, 1 per day. Have you tried the rainbow sprinkles? They taste just like happiness.
Doc, has anything changed with your diabetes status in the last 2 years?
Yeah, I was diagnosed with diabetes mellitus. My doctor says I need to reduce the rainbow sprinkle intake.
What they found was that men who reported drinking the highest amounts of sugary drinks had a 24% greater risk of developing type 2 diabetes compared to the men who reported drinking none. And how much did those highest consumers drink? Somewhere between 4.5 to 7.5 servings per week. So on average, 1 sugary drink most days. When they looked at the data in a different way, they found that drinking 1 sugary drink per day was associated with a 16% increased risk of developing type 2 diabetes. That sounds pretty compelling. So can we say that drinking soda causes type 2 diabetes? Well, not quite, because there are some weaknesses to cohort studies. The first that may jump out to you is whether the people in the cohort are representative of the larger population. In this study, all the participants were men, they were doctors, and they're mostly white. This cohort was created because this group of people would be reliable when answering health-related questions and motivated to be part of health research, though they do represent a pretty narrow slice of socioeconomic and ethnic diversity. So we can't assume that associations seen in these white male doctors would be applicable to all populations. That's why in nutrition research, we can't rely on the results from just one prospective cohort study. Another challenge that impacts all observational nutrition studies is exposure measurement. How well are the researchers able to quantify what the participants actually ate? This study, like many nutrition studies, used a food frequency questionnaire.
Doc, in the past year, how often did you consume garlic fresh? As in 1 clove or powdered as 4 shakes?
Well, Olive Garden has all-you-can-eat breadsticks, so when I'm there, I eat all that I can eat.
So in multiple choice, that would be... And how much garlic is on a garlic breadstick?
The right amount, because they're delicious.
Link in the video description to a food questionnaire if you want to try filling one out for funsies. Suffice it to say that these surveys can't get super precise data on diet. It can be hard to remember.
How often did you use onions as a garnish or in a salad?
How am I supposed to remember that?
Difficult to count.
Doc, how many drinks is that?
1 big gulp is 1 drink.
And sometimes participants may not answer truthfully, especially for exposures that can be perceived to carry moral weight, like sex, drugs, and alcohol.
In the past year, how often did you drink liquor?
Let me think about that.
Take your time.
Oh boy, Dr. Don, let's count this. Let's see, there's a morning whiskey mouthwash, Bailey's in my Dunkies, cocktails at lunchtime, 2 on Wednesdays. There's no way to count what happens on Thirsty Thursdays. an old-fashioned or a Manhattan with dinner, depending on the day, and then the Scotch nightcap. That adds up to a number I can't say out loud. Come on, Donnie boy, think. I'm going to say 2.
2 per what?
2 per week. That's it. My final answer.
Food frequency questionnaires. Not so reliable, but historically the best available tool. While they may not be precise, they are good at differentiating between high consumers and low consumers. Other things that make nutrition research tricky are confounders. Many diseases, like type 2 diabetes, can be influenced by a whole lot of different factors. Age, physical activity, smoking, diet quality, socioeconomic status, the list goes on. These factors are called confounders. When researchers want to isolate the impact of sugary drinks on diabetes in a cohort study, they need to correct for the impact of the confounders by including data about these factors in their statistical models. If you read this study in detail, you'll see that when the researchers included only age as their confounder, they found an association between drinking high amounts of artificially sweetened beverages and increased risk of type 2 diabetes. Whereas when they included a larger list of confounders, then this association disappeared. So from this study, it seems like diet drinks aren't related to risk of developing diabetes. This is something to watch out for in nutrition headlines. Sometimes they'll report results from the uncorrected model, which aren't an accurate reflection of the whole picture. Another challenge is that researchers can only correct for the confounders that they measured. So if you think that hairspray use in the 80s may impact risk of diabetes, but the researchers never asked about hairspray, then it can't be corrected for in the statistics. So the reality is that our environment is complex. Prospective cohort studies are midway up our hierarchy of evidence. Since they're observational, we can't use them to tell whether a certain food exposure causes a disease because we didn't precisely control the exposure. But they can be effective tools to learn about health conditions that take many years or even decades to develop. That's why prospective cohort studies are so powerful in nutrition. Many of the outcomes we're interested in studying are lifestyle-related diseases that take a long time to develop, like type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and some types of cancer. It's not financially feasible or realistic to run decades-long randomized controlled trials to study the impact of a diet intervention on chronic disease development. So when you're being a critical news consumer, be skeptical of causational statements from cohort studies. But know that when they're designed well, they can be a powerful tool for studying nutrition and health. That's what science tastes like. Thanks for tuning in to Nourishable. Check out the video description for links to the study and food frequency questionnaire if you really want to dig into the details, plus my whole video series on the hierarchy of evidence. And if you value this content, help support the channel by sponsoring Nourishable on Patreon. We'd be oh so grateful for that cup of coffee while reading prospective cohort studies about coffee and cardiovascular disease. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all things nutrition.